Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe, and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. Today, I have my guest, Pasha Paroh, to join me again. We've been doing a little series on various issues that are all interconnected. And as you watch these, you'll see the connections. So today, we decided to do a podcast on that statement, the devil's in the details. And what does that mean? And today we're going to break some of this down and give you some examples and talk about our thoughts on that. And as we said before, we'd love to hear from you. Any comments, please ask questions. And if there's something you want us to cover in the next podcast, please let us know. Okay. On that note, Pasha, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Trish.
I'm so excited.
Always the perfect day.
So in my text, you said you had some stuff. So I want to start with that, where you're at on the topic of.
You know what? I appreciate it. The detail, right? I got stuff. I got stuff today.
Good. I'm excited.
Let's start with what we know best, right? We're gonna go into the etymology real quick. And detail, 1603. As a noun, was a small piece or quantity, right? Cut into pieces entirely, right? I like that because of the concept of as above, so below, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think that shows you how we have to address things in our life. We can start with the small. And then once we get those opinions or thoughts or facts about what we think about the variables, that's when we can expand them to the whole equation. So I want you to get started. I'm gonna just filter in some of this stuff as we go. The devil is in the details.
The devil's in the details. When we this kind of again, these podcasts we're doing are they're interconnected. I mean, a few of them we were talking about blanket statements. Mm-hmm. And blanket statements blur the details. It's when something is non-specific and it doesn't have clarity, it invites shenanigans. It invites somebody to take advantage of somebody or to abuse somebody when there is a lack of clarity. And, like I did a post for those of the people that are following my Facebook page about the term unconditional love.
Right.
When something is open for interpretation, it leaves people to fill the details in themselves. And when that happens, one person is thinking one thing and another is thinking another. And that's not good. Because
detached.
Yes, there's a lack of clarity. And so people can use that slogan or statement in not so good of a way. That's why clarity is just really important. And that's why they say the devil's in the details. Like if you're going to sign a contract, read the small print. Those are the details. You talk about contracts, if you don't pay attention to the details when you're making even a verbal contract, you don't even outline the details, you're going to have issues later because you don't have that clarity. If that makes any sense. I said all that in one fell swoop there.
I absolutely think it does, because especially when you get into contracts, if you're not aware of the details, if you're not conscious of the terms and agreements, then you may be caught off guard with actions based upon that contract in the near future and the long-term future. One of the main reasons why you'll hear me say, you hear it a lot, we've talked about it, but I don't do titles. It's the same thing. If you start to look at the title as a verbal contract, people have popular belief as to what it should be, what it is. And then when they receive the terms and conditions of the contract being applied to them, they may find out that they don't like it. And they want to unsubscribe, Or exactly. Once you find out what it really is, you may find out that, hey, you need that and you want to subscribe. So even great. Let me turn my phone down here real quick. So
I should do make sure it's down.
So I think that's great. And that goes into the details. Like you said, you got to take it down to the small pieces, the small quantities. We look at stuff as such. I like I have adopted your phrase blanket statement
Blanket statement.
officially. So like with
Oh,
that,
well, I got it from somebody. I don't know. I heard it, and I was like, this is the right term for it. I feel
yeah.
it blankets things when it doesn't address every scenario, like unconditional love.
Mhm.
I put that on my post. I said how I felt about it. And then all of a sudden I had all these people saying, unconditional love is this, unconditional love is that. I rest my case. That's my point.
Yes.
You think it's this, he thinks it's that. Meanwhile, there's no clarity. Everybody thinks they're on the same page when they're not. And
Which
that's
brings
where
us
you
to the
get the
statement today.
problem. That's where you have the problem. And that's why that's why they say the devil's in the details, because if there isn't clarity, then you're going to have problems one way or the other. It's going to create miscommunication. Um, I use the word misnomers. It suggests one thing, but it's not actually really that.
Mhm.
Always, not always.
Not
Maybe in
always.
some cases. And I don't know if it was you. Oh no. Actually, it was my boyfriend. We went for a walk the other day, and he was talking about the English language and how they have lots of words that have more than one meaning.
Mhm.
And that's why it's so difficult to learn. Wait, I
Yeah.
thought it meant this. Nobody means this over here and that of it. Oh, wow.
The the English
Crazy.
language is called an equivocal language, and it's like equal, equivi, right? Vocal. So different words, same meaning, like you're saying. Which definitely makes it confusing, which definitely allows for people to intentionally use it to confuse and deceive. So basically, that sets it up as it's set up with the intention to deceive. And that's why etymology comes into play and it's so important because we get to
Yes.
learn. Yeah. Yeah.
Devil's in the detail. Learn the meaning of the words. Actually do research. And um, that's very important. I'm seeing more and more people talk about this. So that gets me really excited when I see people asking, what does that mean? Good question.
Mhm.
Ask
So,
questions, people. Don't be afraid.
right. Like the word devil, right? We go look up the etymology of the word devil.
Oh,
It
wow.
it means Satan, number one. And then number two is any evil spirit or devil, right? So you can say Satan and or any evil spirit. Now, we were just talking about invoking and evoking, and we know
Yep.
there's angels and demons. So there's angels with good attributes and bad. There's demons with bad attributes and good. So the I think that's probably why they use the wording any evil spirit, because you can have evil angels, just like you can have good demons, so to speak. I mean, when you look at the hierarchy of the as above, so below in that structure, they have different
Duality. Is
yeah,
that
they
what
have
you're getting?
different
The above and below is really the yin and yang duality aspect of things. Do I have that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. When you
Okay.
study that arena, so to like you find out that if this is the angel section up here, right? There's angels and their characteristics are some of them are good and some of them are bad, even though they're an angel. And then when you look at the demonic spirits or the demons, so to speak, that some of them are actually good while we're thinking that they're all bad. So
Mm.
I think that's why I like that they put it as evil spirit, because you can have evil in all places, like you know what I mean, in the good and
Yes.
bad side.
Dark and
So
light. Right.
yeah. So I think that's important because when we got into the conversation of invoking and evoking, we were talking about bringing in the personas and the characteristics of either someone influencing us to be whatever they want us to be, right? Possession that way, or it could actually be an entity that we're being possessed by, or when we got into possession, you're actually taking control of certain things around you and utilizing them.
I like that.
So now the devil in the
Yes.
details is the evil spirit in the smallest of parts of everything, right?
When there's shenanigans, that's a word that just
There you
keeps
go.
coming to me.
The
Shenanigans can
shenanigans.
happen, which is, trickery and manipulation.
Yes. So that is the devil, the evilness in the spirit, like the equivocal language of English, the devil in the details of the words, the the hidden applications in the meanings of the words and the use of the language to deceive each other, whether it's whatever the relationship titles are, you know,
And it has everything to do with transparency
and those contracts
and
that you were talking
contracts,
about.
transparency, clarity. For years on and off, I've been a housekeeper, and I've been, thinking about going back part-time because I like being my own boss, and
Mhm.
I enjoy beautifying people's homes. It's very rewarding and it keeps
Yeah,
me in good shape. But I've learned that when you do a bid, you should have a list of what they want. You have this list, this chart with baseboards, ceiling fans, light fixtures, counters, blah, 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 right? So
mhm.
you ask them all they want. And then at the end, you have them sign it to your agreement that this is what they're specifically going to get for their money.
Right.
And I learned that when you go in and say, yeah, I'm going to clean your house, what does that mean? It means something different to everybody. Some people think, oh, it's pine and shine. Other people like deep cleaning. They're very different things.
Mhm.
But if you don't specify that, and you're thinking one thing and there's no clarity, and the person you're working for thinks it's something now, somebody's going to be disappointed. It's not going to go well because
It
you're not communicating clearly.
yeah, it definitely increases the possibility of that occurring.
Oh yes, it happened all the time where I would go in and I thought you were going to do the baseboards and I thought you were going to do this. When did I say that?
When
I
did
never
you
said
ask that,
that.
right?
When did you ask that? Yeah, it was like, you're the boss. When you go in and you do the bid, you make sure you're clear what they expect of you. Because I went in to do a job one time. I thought you were going to do the blinds. Oh no, I don't do blinds. Blinds are hellacious. It's like a
Mm,
whole other job in itself. But they just assumed that because they had a housekeeper before me that did that. And they
yeah.
just thought that's what comes with the territory. And there's no clarity. So one person thinks this is going to happen. The other person thinks this is what's going to happen. And do we not see a whole lot of that going on in society?
Yeah, and I think this is why we're, you know, I just did a video on the YNS7 where I was talking about how basically you get held back or it feels like you're being held back sometimes, or you got people that's got their nose up in the air and they're talking about, avoid people who've messed up their lives and stuff like that, right? Which is all perception based anyway. And we were talking about it afterwards about how, like, Queen Latifah used to work at Burger King. Nicki Minaj was a waitress at Red Lobster. So, you snobbing yourself up with these people that are later on are going to become far greater, right? So my point of the matter is we do a lot of stuff in business, and because of our connection and other stuff, we get this perception of the whole world in clarity that's more defined maybe, right, than some other people. And this is why we can offer this opportunity to help uplift everybody in these conversations. So one thing you want to do is I found that when I talk to business people, hey, have you ever dealt with an expert in before? So in home beautification before? Yes, no, okay. Well, tell me about that. What was it like? And now that opens us up to receive the pros and cons of their experiences with what we do, and we can go
Yes.
on from there and make notes on what we need to do. So
Yes.
that's what I got.
If I, if I'd asked the lady, what do you expect? And she would, in the beginning, said blinds, I would have said, I'm sorry, I don't do blinds. But I didn't
Yeah.
do that. And that was my fault. I was responsible for, I'm the person they're hiring. So it's important to make sure that all communication has clarity and everybody understands
Mhm.
what's happening and what they're agreeing upon.
So it takes a strong person to say to take responsibility like you just did there. The point of me, I don't really believe in fault, right? It's the opportunity we learn, we grow. So, but that showcases how on both sides of that situation, whether you're the producer or the consumer, you have to iron out the details or else you're inviting the devil in.
Okay. Yes.
Because equally how we could
And
say it was
yes.
your issue, it was also their issue. because they didn't make
Yeah,
it clear
yes.
either.
Right. Yeah, yes. But if you're the person providing the service, then you should be clear about what that is and what that looks like. You should be transparent. You should be saying, this is what I'm going to deliver for this money that you're giving me. All of,
Mhm.
and so, I mean, I think about, because then later you're gonna go, oh my gosh, I just signed something away and I had no idea what I
Mhm.
just did to myself. Or even like you said, a verbal contract, when somebody says something that's a blanket statement and you go, okay, they think you're agreeing to everything. You didn't. Yeah, I think we've driven that in here enough, but
Yeah, and I
yeah,
got this. I got a few
the
different
card.
tarot
Yeah,
decks,
that's cool.
and
Cool.
I should have thought this through a little better because they're green, so my camera's canceling out the alligator slash devil there, but the devil card, right? I had to go to the devil card for this one because we're talking about the devil and details. Now, when the devil card comes out in a positive or upright form, its associations are like will, persistence, uh, permanence, and commitment, which is everything we were just kind of going over with making sure these contracts are right so that you can, everybody on both sides are expressing their will, right? It's persistence, and it's identifying clearly the commitments on both sides.
Yes.
Isn't that ironic?
Isn't that all right? Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, I was trying to think of, I had another scenario in my head and it just passed me by. It'll come back to me. But as I move forward into my own business, I'm trying to be extremely mindful about these particulars, you
Mhm.
know, um, because just on every level, clarity is just so important. And I'm seeing more and more people talk about it. You know, there's a subject that I don't want to bring up, but it is kind of pertinent. It's like, how can I give a different version of it without saying it? You know, when someone wants to tell you what to do and their intention is good, but how can I say this? When you're in a conversation and you lose track of the point, you can get, okay, like it's something just came to me. Like when they talk about Jesus and they'll bring a verse of the Bible, a story of Jesus and whatever, and people will get into the argument or debate as to whether Jesus existed, was he a Jew, just all
Mhm.
these different things, rather than the message. And when you're not clear about the topic, you can get really confused. I don't know what I'm trying to say, how I'm trying to apply this. Sometimes, yeah, I'll come back to that later. But yeah, just confusion and lack of clarity is what I'm trying to get at in general. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. But yeah, so key thing is communication, proper communication. And that's just something I'm learning more and more, to be clear and to be mindful of the blanket statements that, and even words can be taken like that. Even just one word can be like evil, anything can, if you're not clear when you're talking about it, it can be skewed in a certain direction, and that's goes back to what you're saying. Etymology is so important, and spells and what you're actually saying,
Mhm.
what's actually being said. So I don't know if I'm making any sense again. It's
Let me help. Let me add this to
cool.
what you were saying earlier because I think I grasp what you're saying. I feel the energy with it. Now, going back to the trusty tarot card here, and um, for the devil, generally speaking, it says generally speaking, the card's not a good sign, right? Um, but if positioned on a place where commitment is needed, it can provide a positive effect for success. So, going back to commitment, right? What they weren't doing is they were not committed to the topic you were discussing. from it kind of sounded like that. Like they started to
Yes.
deviate from the conversation. It's kind of like you're in an argument with someone and they ask you an off the wall question just so you can say yes to it, that they're right, so that you can so
That's
they can
it.
say they're right,
Yes.
but what they're saying or what they triggered you to say they're right about has nothing to do with the point you were making. They just
Yes.
wanted
You
to
get,
hear you, right?
yes.
Okay.
Which is
So
another form of the details sometimes can get in the way of the point too. So, but that's a backwards thing. And, but it came to me today. I saw somebody talking about it and, you know, and it made me look at another point of
mhm.
about the details that can also get in the way of clear communication, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying
Man, this is a great topic. I'm so glad you picked this because the devil card is also a sign of gaining control. So look at that manipulation there that you were just talking about, right? You when you're doing it properly, like you just spelled out on a business side or just in general life, you're wanting to understand the contract, get the terms and agreements so that you can gain control of the truth of the matter. The same way the person that was gonna flip and bring up the conversation and skew it this way to something unrelated so that you can agree to with them just so you can agree, they're also attempting to gain control through use of the devil factor of the situation. And based on what position you are using the devil for, it decides how you see the details in what light. This is amazing.
I'm following a doctor who's really great. I do really appreciate her work so much. And she talks
Mhm,
about the narcissist.
mhm.
And I just get so frustrated because narcissist is not a person. Narcissism is a behavior. When you start to pigeonhole and make it about a person, you got shenanigans. You're not really addressing what's happening. It invites the batting against each other, not addressing the behavior. So
Mhm.
I went on her page and I said, what does a narcissist look like? What is the behavior that they adhere to? And she just put a chart up yesterday.
Wow.
And I'm like,
So
thank you. Because what are we talking about? You're saying narcissist is blanket term. And again, someone has their own idea what a narcissist is when it's not a person, what is it that you want to address here? And really it comes down to is the behavior is harmful. So let's
mhm.
talk about that and all of the behaviors that fall under the umbrella of the narcissist or narcissism. So we're moving in that direction. I'm very excited. She did do that chart and I'll be sharing it shortly because I just think it's so important
Yeah,
because now we're getting into the details.
yeah. And speaking of details, right? You have something in your mind and you create it in reality, right?
Right.
And then someone comes as an observer and they're like, wow, look at all the detail put into that work, right?
Hmm.
What I'm uh, prefacing here is when you speak of the behavior, it just triggered something in me related to this conversation. I have a question. Is the behavior the material manifestation of something immaterial or non-material? Basically, I'm asking: can we categorize behavior as being a material, like a product, like we produce something?
Hmm. Hmm. Give me an example of what it comes to
Use
your mind when you think about that.
use your the example you just had with the narcissism. Is the behavior, can we say that the behavior, can we call the behavior a production? Because then that would be able to be slid into material world, right?
Interesting.
The
Um,
manifestation of.
the part that I don't like, the reason why I brought that up is that I don't like that you make it the person and it's not. And
Mhm,
that's the problem because, um, for instance, and I may have brought this up, I've talked about this so much, but I've even caught myself thinking, God, what a jerk. No, he's not a jerk.
mhm,
He's choosing to adhere to that behavior. That's not who he is.
Right.
Because people can change their behavior in any given moment. They could choose differently and grow and learn
Okay.
to be their best self.
Okay.
And so when you and then the shenanigans, the details is, you end up condemning that person for a bad day. How do we know they didn't have a diabetic attack, or someone didn't die on them that day, or they lost their job and they don't feel good, and that's not who they are. They're It's a behavior. So you know what I mean? So
I
these
do.
are the details on this that are really, really important, so that we can really understand what we're really talking about, instead of looking like we're talking about one thing, when really, what are we really talking about? That clarity here, and it's a behavior. So, and then you can dig in and get even deeper to the details of, you know, why someone would adhere to the behavior, and then you can get to the root of the cause of the behavior, and then we're getting somewhere.
You just answered the question for me. I mean, in all of that, you answered the question. And let me tell you, this is why I asked the question. And I am really, really excited that we're doing this today, because we've been talking a while, and this is like the first time I've like, you know what, I'm gonna connect this to tarot because it's so amazing. That devil card, and I got other decks. I could pull one out, but I'll if you guys are into tarot at all, your favorite deck, look at your devil card. So the devil card though is about our bondage to all things material. That's why I was asking, can we categorize behavior as material, right? Just like we would a factory, you've got inputs and you get an output, right? If you want to change the output, you change the inputs. And I like the key word that you gave twice in your explanation there was adhere to the behavior. So that totally connects it to it without to this card value, because like I said, it's our bondage, which we could take the word bondage out and put in, it's our adhering to things material. So just like you said, when that person, whatever their inputs were, right? There's two sides of this. There's the producer and the consumer. So whatever their inputs were, right? They output a behavior that we're categorizing as narcissistic, right? So now they have an opportunity, one, to alter their inputs so they can differentiate their outputs, but they adhere, like you said, to the behavior. It's their bondage to the material thing, which is the behavior. Now, on the flip side of the coin, we have the consumer, right? Which is the codependent people in the relationship. So the same way, the output that they're producing from their factory that's being called narcissistic, right? Production, LLC.
Production. Oh my gosh. I thought about that, huh?
Is now being consumed by the people around them as a consumer. And they have the choice to either go to a different factory to get, production from different qualities or levels, or they can remain here. So then again, it's the same thing to them. It's their bondage or it's their adherence to the behavior. On both sides, it's that key adherence to the behavior, which is all the devil card, the bondage to all things material.
And when you address the behavior, you're able to get, just by talking, we're able to get some clarity,
Yeah.
And because ultimately, if you don't know why someone's adhering to that behavior, what's the point in calling them a narcissist? So I don't mean disrespect, but it looks like you're talking about something when you're not. You're not really talking. You're broad
don't
brushing,
sugarcoat it.
broad stroking.
Yeah, don't sugarcoat it. We are absolutely talking about disrespect, because
disrespect and harmful behavior. Yes.
The word respect means relate.
Yes.
So if they're doing something we can't relate to, that is disrespect. We're gonna call a spade a spade.
Yes.
And it directly ties into your confusion statement earlier, where you were talking about you were trying to put it together and you were like, it's confusion and lack of clarity. Right?
Yeah. And sometimes people will use the details or what looks like a detail to divert you from your point too. But that's a whole, we'll visit that one later. That's a whole other onion.
Hmm,
to peel back. But
this is a good one
I
today.
just see shenanigans in the way that we're communicating with each other, or looking like we're communicating when we're not. It's, you get wrapped up in mm, the ego, the dark side of the ego. Again, it's why that's so harmful to say narcissist, because it's not a person, it's a behavior, and we all adhere to them at different times for different reasons. And even unbeknownst to ourselves, we don't even realize that we're doing it, and in talking and speaking about a narcissist, they're over here when it's really a behavior. You know what I mean? It's like this guy that was talking about religion and the things he doesn't like about religion. And he brings up this one of the verses from the Bible. And it's like I said to him, where else do you see this behavior in society? If you're
Mhm.
just here to just burn all the Christians, you're now doing the very thing that you don't want.
Right.
You're now doing in calling someone and pigeonholing somebody and saying that they're a narcissist is a narcissistic thing to do,
Hmm. It's
which, yeah, the behavior, when you get down to the behavior, now you're going to see in every way that this behavior exists, and you can start to really address it, the cause, the root cause.
Yeah, and that's the as above, so below. The whole fact that we're in a fractal universe, quote unquote. So the more you focus on any one given point in time and space, the more it expands, the more you're opened up to all the vastness of the details there. And when you're saying, I think you said so much, and you
I
don't,
know it's a
you gotta give
lot.
it. No, I mean in a good way. Like you got to give yourself credit, because maybe that impasse there that you were having was because you said everything in its infinity with the statement confusion and lack of clarity. Because the confusion is the definition of war. That's the etymology of war. When you look up the etymology of war, it's confusion, basically. So isn't
That's
that
fair.
not the interaction with the relationship there you're talking about with the narcissist and then the person maybe that's either being victimized and or realizing the codependency factor and trying to change their life or renegotiate the contract, so to speak?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, you don't, he was talking about he didn't like the condemnation aspect of religion while you're condemning the religious people. Yeah.
Or bondage
Careful
to
you
all
don't
things.
become the thing you're trying to address. So
Right. And
um yeah.
that's like Mona, was it Mother Teresa or Maya Angelou or one of them? Don't invite me to the anti-war rally, instead invite me to the pro-peace.
Yeah, or just be mindful of what rally you're joining, what's really, look at the details
Yeah.
of the situation. Go, oh, and what is really happening here? Not what
Yeah.
someone's telling you. And that goes back to, the law of cause and effect. And that we
Mhm.
don't, I just see so many people say, oh, how do I, if you're not talking about what you're doing that got you the outcome, if you're looking at, okay, let's say the room's a mess, how to get that way? Your bedroom's a mess. Well, your daily activities, throwing your clothes on the floor and letting the dust pile up. And it didn't just happen. The room just
Mhm.
didn't get messy all by itself. If we don't address that truth, which is an important detail,
Mom be on you.
you're gonna, it's, you're not going to be able to create change. You have to look at what you're doing that's giving you your outcome. And that outcome and that result, you don't even need to know what, it's like what Bob Dylan says, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. Look at your outcome. That's going to tell you what's been happening. Well, when you've got confusion and you've got subterfuge and you've got people arguing semantics, blaming, and instead of asking the question, how do we get here? Let's look at those details. they're so important, because if we don't do something different, what is that? The definition of insanity.
Mhm.
They're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And if you're not talking about the details, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It again, it goes right back to the devil card in tarot, because when it's reversed, it gives you the association of again, there go another synonym for adhere, right? Association. So it gives us the
Cool.
association of the weakness of a body and the soul. So,
Mm.
you know, the thing about a body is it could be the singular individual body, but a body is also like a household, a family, a company, a
Hmm.
nation. So we
A
have
body of water that comes to mind.
yeah, and a body of water is what? The accumulation of,
Drops of water from the sky.
there you go, the
Eventually, I mean,
individual drops.
ultimately, yeah. And so I just see a lot of this in communication online. You know, what are we really talking about here? You look like
Mhm.
you're talking about this, but, and you got all these details, but you really, what are you after? What's
Yeah,
your objective? And
yeah,
people lose their objective in the details, which is the flip side of how it's something looking like it's a detail and it's not.
yeah. And
It's
that's
not
what it's
really. That, I don't know if I can
you, well, you know, yeah, it's
do
not related, like you said, when the person deviates
it.
from the conversation just to appease himself
Right.
versus versus the infinity of possible details that are actually related to the topic. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes. And then those can also be used against you when you can get diverted when you're in a debate. It's important to be really clear about what your objective is. What are you after? Um, it's like when people, I'm going to talk about a sensitive subject. People talk about abortion and they talk about, you know, is it a baby? Is it this? Is it that? You know, what really is important? Pro-choice, your freedom. That's really the point. You can talk about your facts and your figures, and but ultimately, if freedom is on the table, that's what you're really talking about. You can cut to the chase by going, "What's the objective here? I want to maintain my freedom. I don't care if you say this or that and whatever, all your different arguments." Um, you know, when you're talking about honoring someone's freedom, that's what you're talking about. But people will try to facts and figures and points and you know, and by the way, I'm not expressing a view on either point. I guess I, maybe that wasn't the best example, but just when people argue, a lot of times they're not really arguing about the real topic.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to think that one through. That just
No,
came off of the top of
you
my head.
you
But
got it. You got it completely, because and I keep going back to the devil card because that's why I had to pull this card, because it is so relative in this conversation. And we had to talk about, because the devil card in reverse is all about entrapment, attachment, lust, greed, ignorance, and anger. So think about that in your contract negotiations in life, or you wanting to be free. You can get entrapped, which jeopardizes your freedom, right? If you're not careful, you can entrap yourself by the
yes.
ignorance that it mentioned earlier. There's going to be
Mhm.
anger involved. You could wind up
Yeah.
being entrapped. You could wind up being entrapped due to your lust or greed, right? Look at the relationships. You know, why are you with this person? Lust and greed is a lot of it, right? So, and then they're into this relationship with the narcissist and they're wondering, you know, that codependency kicks in and they're trying to stay there because why? And everybody's on the outside looking at, why are you staying with that person? And they're just not saying the truth is, well, I entrapped myself through an attachment to lust and greed, and my ignorance has caused me anger, but I'm still here.
And that's what is the common denominator in everything we've talked about since we started this particular podcast is lack of clarity. Looking like you're saying something, but you're not really, it's not really
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm.
Clear, concise communication.
Yeah,
That's really
totally.
important. People get diverted and confused. Then you have a war.
Right.
or a debate, and thus negating actually the objective, the what are you after kind of thing. So um yeah, so that's why this is so important, and this is why this just really ties in with gaslighting. Gaslighting is a great example of the use of the details in
Hmm.
a not so good way, or
Hmm.
lack of it, but just that not having that clarity. So I know I sound like a broken record because I'm trying to think of, I have ideas in my head, but I'm just not able to get them out right now. So, but anyways, um, I just think this is so important because if words are so powerful, and they are, and there isn't clarity, it's just not a good combination. It's just,
You know the irony in the whole thing, Trish? The irony is this is the exact application of fire to fight fire with fire. So to
oh,
fight the devil with the details, you got to become the devil in the details. You know what I'm saying? Like you
yes.
have to get down in, like you mentioned earlier, get down into the fine print. You have to become the devil in the details to offset the devil in the details. That's the amazement of
Hmm.
all this to begin with.
Yeah, the fight fire with fire, that's another gaslighting. They've
Yeah,
used that and
yeah.
confused that term. Standing up for yourself, people, is not fighting fire with fire. If someone punches you and you punch them back to defend yourself, that's not fighting fire with fire. It's the intention behind the action that's
Hmm.
key on that particular. This is great. Oh, it's so great you brought that up, because I have a friend who's just got two jobs and she's being abused in both of them. And
Hmm.
it's just so, what do you do when you need to make a living and you're in that
Right.
situation, and people, she's saying, well, I don't want to be rude. And I'm like, defending yourself is not rude.
Mm-mm.
It's not rude being real.
Right. And
Be
you're not
real.
real, and we're not being real unless we establish our boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. And if the people can't handle that, oh, then you don't want them in your life. That's not somebody you want. That's not a job that you want. And she's like, well, maybe if I just go along with it, or, it'll, no, they're already trying to write her up. She's only been there a week because they didn't train her. Then they yell at her for not knowing what
Mm.
she's doing. It's just, well, they're just showing you who they are right now already. You're not
Right.
going to, you know, and it's hard. I can't judge people. Sometimes people are in predicaments and they have to do what they have to do. But that still doesn't mean, call it what it is. I
Hmm.
try to tell her, whatever you want to say, you are being abused. You're being, she's like, what do you call that? I'm like, abuse, harassment. But that fight fire with fire could use some, you know, uh, clarity.
I
What
do.
does fight fire with fire? What does that look like when it's occurring? I think there's a lot of confusion on that one.
Yeah, yeah. I knew you would enjoy that usage and tie it into the conversation well. And as far as this application, if we're going to get down into the details, you're going to have to, it goes back. You gotta get that magnifying glass into the fine print. So if they're not, if they're saying they're not training, if they're not being trained, for example, right, then I become I become the devil of the details, right? And then I extract the training from them. I remember, like, I'm the type of person that they go and they train you on the little machine or something. I'm like, hold on, before you go any further. And I pull out my notebook and I draw the whole machine and the keypads and the buttons and this, that, and I'm drawing arrows and talking. It might take me a whole 5 minutes. You gonna sit there and give me this time to do this because this is what I want. Because when you're not around, I'm not gonna call for you. I'm gonna go to my notes.
Oh my
And then later
gosh.
on in life, or life. But later on, there, like if I train somebody on that same machine, I'd be disappointed when people be like, "Oh," I'd be like, "Well, where's your notes, books? You gonna take some notes?" "Oh, I don't need notes. I've learned like this, muscle memory and everything." Now, when you tell me that, I'm not gonna call that person a liar. I'm not gonna say that they don't know what they talk about when they're talking about themselves. But the next day, when you ask me something that I gave you the day before, I'm gonna say this is why I
Yeah,
actually get a note and take notes in a
that is
notebook.
so, I mean, this person isn't, in a pickle and, just had to get a job, you know, it was
Mhm.
essential to get a job in order to survive. So,
And that was in
and they
no
don't
way
tell you
related to
that
them.
when you're doing these modules, these training modules, that's the
Mhm.
only training you're going to get.
Right.
You think, oh, I'm doing the training modules, but they'll show me when I get there. No, that's not the case anymore. Now, when you go to
Mhm.
apply, that's what they do. They give you the training module, but they don't tell you, make sure you keep a notebook because this is the only training you're going to get. That part,
Mhm.
the devil's in the details. They don't
Mhm.
tell you that. And then they just throw you to the wolves,
Yeah.
especially when
Yeah.
you're like going to be a cashier and every console is different and they give you all these various scenarios. Absolutely. This is so key. This is just great. I love
Yeah.
this. This is how you empower people right here. People,
Yeah.
you go out to look for a job and you go into the training module, bring a notebook with you. That's cool. Oh, I love that. She
Yeah.
didn't do that.
Because
She didn't know. Nobody told her this is all the training you're going to get. And that's the way they do it now. They don't want to waste any time and money in training you. They want to see
oh,
how proactive you are. If
yep.
you can
Yep.
pay attention to the details and make note of the details. And that's what's happened to her. Unfortunately, she didn't know that. So
Hey,
you live and you
it's
learn.
that's the thing. And once you that's the thing we talk about here, the devil's in the details. So once you get exposed to the details, if
Yes.
you continue the same action, now that's what did the tarot card say? It's your bondage.
Yep.
Or what did you say, Trish? It's your adherence
Yep.
to.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
There's your part in it.
yeah, we gotta
Always.
always address our part because ultimately
Yes.
we can only control ourselves.
That's right. Oh, this is great. I can't wait to tell her because this is so good. But there are no accidents. I mean, I just told her, I said, this is who these people are. Do you want to work for people that treat you like that?
That's the flip side of it.
Just for a dollar? I don't know, to what end? But I think, and I feel strongly people are having these conversations in large quantities across the world right
Oh
now
yeah,
about the details and what is really going on here. That's a good question.
yeah.
What is really going on here? Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about the details.
You know what? And your apps, you know what? That's I'm really glad you brought that up. And just public disclaimer, I don't know who you're talking about, and what I said in response to that had nothing to do with her as an
Oh
individual.
no, same
What I
here.
okay, so what I learned is because of that situation, right? I've been at companies where they basically set you up to be
Yes.
terminated due to your ignorance when they should have could have would have provided you the information, you wouldn't have been in that position. So by the time later on in my life, like I said, when I come into a position like that, I'm like, oh, yo, hold on, I know you're training me, we got all day, we get paid by the hour here, but I need to know that, let me pull my notebook out and do this, right? And that same drive, so to speak, is how, you know, I was the maintenance scheduler at the 96th ranked Forbes 500 company, right? I was also served as the vice president or vice chairman, excuse me, for the maintenance and reliability chapter for the whole global company. I won't say who the company was, but that's not important. But they're global. It had 90,000 plus employees worldwide, plants and
Wow.
factories and stuff all over the world. And my plant was producing liquid degasification applications. Here's why I bring all that up. I have no degree. So everybody, I'm the only one non-production that don't have a degree. But what I do have is that ability to say, you know what? Oh, you can't do that. That's engineering work. No, I don't care, because if I wait on the engineer, it's going to be another 2 years before it get done. And my people need this remedy right now. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in here and figure it out. I'm going to cross functional network, right? With these people, and I'm going to go do this, put it together, and we're going to get it done in 2 months. And then when they see you keep doing that, now you're opened up to, well, damn, they really can do this. I don't care about making the 6-figure salary maybe that the engineer makes. It would be nice, right? But I don't care about that. What I care about is making sure that
Getting a
my
job
people
done.
are safe, right?
Yeah.
My people are safe. We're not stressing
Right.
ourselves out unnecessarily, all because someone with a 6-figure title wants to take their time in 2 years, because what the problem is doesn't affect them. See, we need to help the people that's going through the problem now and stop waiting on people with another title. We need to renegotiate our own contracts sometime.
And that comes back to questions. You know, we need to start asking the questions. Really, don't be afraid to ask questions. We're just taught to be so afraid. We don't want to look stupid. But if you don't know what's going on, or if there's confusion, stop and go, hey, what do you mean? We could afford to make some revisions in how when anybody's learning anything, they should be allowed to ask what's going on. And also just across the board, in anything, when you see people arguing and debating, what are we really talking about here? You got all this, it's so crazy, the firing back and forth, but what are we really talking about? And I just think a lot of people get caught up in the details, and that can be, again, create shenanigans. Getting so caught up in proving a point that you kind of screwed yourself over in the process in a way. You didn't really, again, if there's not clarity, recognize there isn't clarity for one thing, and then go, okay, what's the question here? And my dad always says that, life is about the questions, not the answer. How can you know what the answer is if you don't even know what the question is? You're trying to get the answer when it's not even clear what you're after, really. That's like when the doctor calls a narcissist that. Well, you kind of missed it now. It just, what's your objective here? What do you really want? You want change. What is it that needs to be changed? That question. What is it really on the table that needs to be changed? And people just get really clouded with facts and figures, and they want to look so good making a point that they miss the whole point. It just gets, and next thing, people are arguing, and they've lost the ability to make a connection. And I have to think of some more scenarios. I just, this stuff is coming at me all the time. My mind is always going like, why is this and why is that? It can be overwhelming. Not can be, it's very overwhelming. I go online and I just see people just back and forth. And if you don't know what the question is, you're going to have trouble. You're not going to have clarity. I could get into some stuff. I could make examples, but when you start bringing up subject matters, people might get offended and think I'm skewing, and I don't want to go down that road. I try really hard to avoid religion and politics just because it's triggering, very triggering thing.
Sometimes we gotta trigger in a unmalicious way, of course, to feed or fuel the conversation to be had amongst others. Like the Dave Chappelle situation. It triggered like a ton of people for a ton of different reasons.
What's going on there? I just recently saw him come out, and I didn't get the whole thing. I don't mind.
Let's just say, without going into the devil in the details. That let's just say that anytime you face canceling, that new cancel culture with everything now
Yes.
because of the
Right.
pacification of people, right?
Right.
Regardless of topic, but that's the thing about democracy. See, most people don't understand that democracy, or what, let me say it like this, what we got to accept is that democracy is mob rule. So the people have to have a majority stake in it for it to be accepted. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Versus a republic, you're just free to be who you are.
These
You
are
know what I
very
mean?
important details, by the way. Thank you for
Mhm,
that
mhm.
clarification.
Yeah.
I look at it like, I'm going to say it might be a little too racy. I don't know if I've necessarily viewed democracy as freedom.
Mm.
I don't think it represents freedom. It's almost a little bit of an oxymoron. A little bit.
I
Yeah.
like I like your I like your observation because
You
it's
know,
not.
one group of people saying for the greater good does not supersede that individual's rights and freedom.
You nailed it on the head right there. You and me just spoke on conformity issues. And by nature, democracy is all about conformity.
It
If
it's a
you're
little bit of
outside
like
of,
it's a group mentality. I don't like group mentalities. That's
yes,
cliques. I don't do cliques.
yes, which causes
I'll
what?
repeat that. I don't do cliques. I don't. Nope. I don't go along. Because in the, just getting some clarity on these things, law versus what's right and wrong.
Mhm.
Well, the law says this, but is it right? That's the question. Again, the question. What's the
Yeah,
question on the table? This is right, is this wrong? Yeah, so the democracy is more of a group mentality type of a thing, and I just don't care for that.
yeah. It's our bondage. There go that card again. The devil card's coming up again. It's our bondage to all things material. So now
Yes.
attachments, or ignorance of the law, like when you get into it, is the Latin word that says the whole world wish to be deceived, let them be, which is in modern rendition is the ignorance of the law is no excuse. So
Popularity comes to my mind. What's
yeah,
popular?
oh man, that is
What's
so,
popular? Standardize. We go back to our first podcast.
oh,
Standardizing things um,
that's such a trigger.
is very dangerous because
Right.
it's not realistic. We're not all the same. We all have our own fingerprints for a reason. We're all snowflakes. I've said this before. Beautiful
Mhm,
and unique, and that's the point of it. Like
mhm,
I've said before, and Dave Grohl says, there is only one you, and that is your power.
mm.
There is no competition. I don't even like that word. It's never sat well with me. People say, well, there's healthy competition. Give me an example of that, because I've not seen it in my life. When you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you're negating yourself. And one thing I wanted to bring up about your last live podcast thing that you did last night about, I didn't see the whole thing, but I saw enough of it, and I didn't know it was based off a post that someone had put about, many very successful people started off at Burger King or started off at the hot dog stand or um
Oh no, the
what was
post,
it? Yeah, what prompted you to talk about that?
yeah, the post wasn't, their original post wasn't about that. That was my response. What their
Ah,
post was about was kind of like what I summarized earlier. That's actually what I was referring to in that summary when I was like, oh, you know, they were saying basically avoid the people who's messed up their lives, or else you'll mess up yours too. And I was like, how many times do you see snobby people go in and talk about the waitress or the wait, because they think they're better than them, because of their position in life. And I was showcasing how it was like 40 celebrity, like not just celebrities, but super successful people, like monetary wise, career achievement wise. And they started off in these, whatever you want, what some people would consider bullshit ass positions in life. And look at who they become now. So you know, from not being enough of a devil in the details of the human being, by being the devil in the details of the title, that, or something that, like you said,
Title.
that when you said that person goes and brings up something in the conversation over here that doesn't have anything to do with what you're talking about, you know, so
Right.
they went into something that had nothing to do with who the human was.
Yes.
Like you said, they didn't scan their fingerprint.
Yeah.
They looked at their badge on their, and it said waitress, and they assumed that defined them. And I was just like, that really, I take that, I'm not saying I take it personal. However, I see how that damages our communities.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for
And
sure.
we got to get over that, people.
Jim Carrey, he goes around, well, he used to go around and talk to college graduates, and he would say, I'm here to tell you, you can have the beautiful wife, the car, everything you ever dreamed of, and it's not the answer. Because if you don't have the cake, whether you work at McDonald's or you're Steve Jobs, you don't have the cake. And that's yourself and your self-value that is determined by yourself.
Exactly.
All the frosting in the world is never going to get the job done because it's not what's missing. So many people look outside. And when you talk about things in that way, you're devaluing people based on where they work, with their financial, how much money they made. What is up with that? That has nothing to do with the person's value. We need to revisit what actually has value in this world. And success, what is that? You know,
becoming the devil of the details there.
Yes.
Right.
And because it's, if you're not talking about the details, it's just what we're doing here, you're allowing, people are being harmed, they're being pigeonholed, they're being put in a box, they're being relegated. When you work at McDonald's, you know, you're a loser.
Yeah. It's
Come back to competition and the loser winner. According to, when that's subjective, if you really think about it, success is subjective. It's different for each individual. You'll go to Zimbabwe and see some guy in a mud hut who's perfectly content.
Right.
Doesn't have any money.
Because they don't need it there.
So what is happening? You are putting your self-esteem in the hands of other people.
If you're not conscious of the devil and the details.
If you're not conscious, if you don't know what's really happening, what is really going on here? It's just, you're trying to relegate me into a faction of people, a class of people. Huh?
Yeah.
That's just so.
Just like the experience I was sharing, you know, I share a few things from my personal life, but just like the one I just gave earlier, when they're like, oh, you don't have a degree, you shouldn't be doing that, you're not an engineer. And then my last project there, that as a green belt that I led, realized $750,000 in annual sales increase from initial one-time $80,000 investment. So now you put an extra $1 million on the board for them a year, basically, and they're like, oh, great job. And in back of my mind, like, yeah, but in the beginning, you were so telling me I couldn't do it because I'm not an engineer. You see what I'm saying?
Right. The title and the status. But I mean, if people really looked into their American history, I read a book on Abraham Lincoln's childhood. Wow. He didn't have any education. I think he had like maybe, you know, a week, something like that. But anyways, he was a great problem solver. He could look at a thing and go, oh, it's this. Why don't you just do this little thing over here and boop? And he did that. There was, I don't remember all the particulars, but it was in his town, Springfield, Illinois, and their waterway, the river, lakes and all that for getting goods into their town. They had some kind of cluster mess. And he went in there and he goes, no, you got to do this over. He could just see it. And so the townspeople were like, they said, we want you to come over and become part of our government. I forget what the title was. He started off, and that's how he got started, because he was just he had that mind set,
Yeah.
which is, a degree does not make you good at what you do.
No.
Just because some people will go to school to be an engineer and they have no natural affinity for it. They just want to make money. So let's get into the details of that. If you
Right.
have a mindset that is an built for engineering, you have the way you think is a natural affinity towards engineering. All the
Mhm.
degrees in the world, if you have an education, you really don't naturally have that. Uh, how is that good? Education doesn't always mean the document. If life experience and who you are, and if you can demonstrate that you can do these things, then how much does the degree really mean? We just need some revisions in this and these details, because they're just, let's say that engineer did come in and he wasn't able to do it. That happens. What am I saying? It just comes back to the titles. The title doesn't always make you so.
Right.
It's what you can do. It's who you are. It's that kind of thing. Your mind, that kind of thing. I'll come back to that later.
Hey, no, you actually already did it when you said popular. See, what we got to understand is when we talk popular, we know that the currency is fake, right? It's not real, so they can print all the currency they want. And what drives what's popular? Money behind, or a currency pushed behind stuff to make it spread and make it publicly popular, right? So you have a whole popular thing about college, which is now becoming phased out because people are realizing that that degree doesn't have the
And
same
there's that.
ROI. Yeah, doesn't have the same ROI on it as it did in the 50s. So the popular belief is now changing because people are becoming the devil in the details.
Yes, because there are many people that get degrees that fudge their way through. And then there are
Mhm.
people like you that know it already. They don't even know to go to school. Their mind is already designed, that their thinking is that way. That was what the townspeople of Springfield saw. Wow, he's a problem solver. He had not an ounce of education, but wisdom, life
Yeah,
experience. Um, and we need to revisit of what actual real education is. I saw that meme, everybody's being flooded with all this information and no wisdom. If you
I like it.
if you have the
Thank you.
degree and you don't have wisdom,
Yeah.
invite shenanigans. Someone will come in, they have the degree, but they don't really know what they're doing. They got D's. Nobody knows that. They barely got their degree. They fudged their way through, cheated. A lot of people cheat. By the way, it's no judgment. It's just an observation,
Mhm.
discernment about these things. And you know what I mean? So again, in the monetary structure, people go for these degrees because of the money when they're not even interested in the field.
Right.
And we have a lot of people doing that, going after these jobs they don't really want to be doing. They just want to make enough money to provide for their family and all that. So they'll go with what is going to bring them that monetary gain instead of, and that goes back to
Instead of who they are.
instead of who they are. And then what do you have? The graveyard of people that didn't actually do with their life what they really wanted to do.
And that Trish was in the undertow. You make a lot of great points, and you don't
So
you
do
don't
you.
even.
So
Hey,
thank
thanks.
you
We're
so
we're a
much.
great team, and I just want you to realize. I always tell you, just you're doing great. I really appreciate you. I'm proud of you. Let me tell you what I'm
Mm.
getting at here. The undertow of that video that you were referring to last night was delayed specialization, and that's a whole
Yeah,
like
you mentioned
proper
that word,
topic.
specialization.
Yeah,
Right.
because what it showcases that the people that get the early start, the head start on things, they picked so early that they never had time to develop and know who they are as a person. And then they find out later on in life, you know what?
They don't like it.
Oh, you're right. You know what I'm saying? The
They
people
got their
that
ladder on the wrong wall.
right, they find out when they're at
Oh,
the
wait.
4 rungs from the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yes.
versus the people that they're putting their nose up in the air about, right, so to speak, is the ones that the went here, tried this, maybe climbed up a little bit and say, yeah, this ain't for me. Boom. So they got to start all over at the bottom or somewhere else. They climb up that ladder. So every time they drop down, they're like, oh, this person messed up their life. Look, they done totally ruined their situation. We got to avoid them now because if they messed up their life, we don't want to be associated with them because you'll mess up yours too type mentality, right? And I'm looking at that. But what happens is from all of those repeat starts in different areas and different opportunities and totally different situations, they're gaining a breadth or a girth of knowledge, and it's called a T. You can have a wide T or you can have a deep T that's narrow, or you can have a wide T with some, and maybe you have a wide T with pipelines that go down halfway. It's more like an M or something, you know what I mean, instead of a T. But what that does in the long term is the people that got started early, of course, in the beginning, they go up financially and then they plateau. And then they're looking down at the people that keep doing this. But what's going to happen is the people that's doing this is eventually going to find their niche and then they become elite. So the plateau of the other people is here when they were snobby and talking about them, but the person's going to finally find their way and they're going to go to the moon with it.
Man, you could be elite all you want. How do you know the guy that's the manager at McDonald's ain't the happiest, content person you ever met? Contentment,
Facts.
vitality,
Yes.
vitality. If you're not talking about vitality, why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah.
That's what I don't like about the measuring and this is what success is and, this model and, what you look so much of the devil's in your detail, what you look like rather than what you actually are, who you actually are. Going back to the titles.
Well, for clarity for everybody, what it's getting at is not so much, well, what my presentation was, well, you're absolutely right in the judgment of them being a fry cook at McDonald's or even the manager, to someone that maybe thinks they're up here, whatever position they got, right? But because that person was the fry cook or the manager at McDonald's in their life, on their journey, that's going to be part of what catapults them to the success that they're going to find later in life. Like Barack Obama, I'm not into presidents, no matter who it is.
You just use him as an example, right?
Thank you. But he was the ice cream scooper at a Baskin Robbins. So imagine going in there one day, the snobby people, and their ice cream scoop wasn't right, and they were telling Barack, the future president, that he was never going to be nothing in life. You dumb ice cream scooper. I'm not saying that's how I feel about him, but I'm trying to bring home the emotion to people, right? So they're in there defaming who, unbeknownst to them, is going to be the future leader of the United States corporation.
Yes. And why is that? Because we have negated the truth that wisdom is far more important than formal education.
Yeah.
What are they doing when they're working at McDonald's? They're learning wisdom. They're doing what Abraham Lincoln did. Oh, I'm figuring this out. And this works over here if you do that. The other part of what he did was he would go to the courthouse and study the court proceedings and look at the logs and read the notes. And that's how he learned about law, observing how they actually were doing it firsthand. That's how he became a lawyer, by the way, observing what people do, where they go, wisdom.
Makes so much
results
sense.
What gets you the results you want, and that's the most important kind of education there is. Just cause and trial and error, cause and effect. You can't learn that in a book, man. You can only go so far with that. But if you don't have, it's like, and I mean no offense to therapists, but if you're counseling somebody on trauma and you've never had it happen to you, the person that has the trauma would do better in a room full of other people that have experienced trauma. Then you have group therapy based on having those experiences. How are you going to help somebody if you don't know what it's like to have been there? It's a lot harder. You can read the books and Freud and Jung and all that. But when you've been there, it's a whole other level of understanding, direct understanding. So, you know, um, I didn't mean to get off the subject of the devils and the details, but really
No,
everything,
you
everything is details. Let's look at all of the
right.
details, all of the variables. And most important, look at your outcome. What is your outcome here?
Trish, you were
Is it what you
absolutely in alignment.
want? And then you got to go, okay, well, how did we create this? Because outcomes don't just come out of nowhere. I mean, Mother Nature, that's a whole other, the universe of Mother Nature, but I'm talking about in human behavior and community and the collective of humanity, you know. Um, I don't know, but just that triggered me. That triggered me because my first job was a burger joint and I got such a great education that first job.
Yeah. It, you know, like what I was saying in support of you is that you are absolutely still in line with the devil in the details, because on that, on both sides of those coins, what you're dealing with is the opportunity to control that series of descriptions that we had from the devil tarot card: entrapment, attachment, lust, greed, ignorance, and anger. So on the snobby side, their entrapment is the appearance of what they believe in the title or position versus the actual human being and the potential and
Happening.
value, and they have an attachment to that perspective based on their lust and greed, which created the ignorance that made them angry at the person being in that position. Now, on the flip side of that coin, the person in that position needs to free themselves from the entrapment of that codependent relationship, of maybe that narcissistic interaction, or if that's accurate, because they need to realize that they could become entrapped if they allow that to penetrate their minds, and they need to have the attachment to who they are instead of their label. And then they need to not have lust and greed and ignorance, and then they won't be in anger because they'll be focused on their path that they're on and who they're becoming, regardless of who's hating on you around you.
And then you have the question, why do they have lust and greed? Where does that come from? What perpetuates that? It's this
That trauma
constant,
you was talking about.
yes, looking outside of yourself for a sense of yourself for approval. When only, we just had a big talk with a friend of mine, Bonnie, if you're watching this one goes out to you. There's no such thing as a guru. We are all our own guru. We're all teachers and students at the same time. That's why it's School of Hard Knocks. That's why I called it that. That's why I'd like to have children on this show and talk about their life experiences at some point when the opportunity arrives to talk, because there's wisdom from all walks, like out of the mouths of babes. You hear that all the time. Children, they see things and they don't have a filter and they're like, well, but which is great. It's valid. So if your value is based upon that, how is that ever going to be healthy? How is that ever going to bring vitality? How is that ever going to bring joy and contentment? What you do for a living, if it's all just about dollars, it's not going to go well. There's no balance. That's what happened to Steve Jobs. It wasn't balance. He didn't spend enough time, and the other things were, which was the reason he worked and to be successful was to be able to provide for his family. But that's just not monetary. It's also building, that's your family, it's your kin, it's your next generations you're putting out into the world, and it's so important. It has more value than the dollars. It's the cake. The dollars are the frosting. The cake, if you don't have the cake, you're going to be Michael Jackson, one surgery after another, to where you don't have a nose anymore. And you're so miserable and you die of a drug overdose because you can barely just stand to even be alive. Is that living? Yeah, he had all the money and success and everything you could possibly dream of. But was he happy?
Mm-hmm.
Happiness, we're not talking about happiness. What brings you happiness? Like my friend who died several years ago of cancer, who went to school to be a lawyer. She's very smart. But all she ever wanted to do was sing. She did, but not the way she truly dreamt to, because her dad and her family, you got to do this. Because they were from Serbia, you got to get an education, you got to,
Right.
And I think think that might be why she got sick, to be honest.
Yeah, that stress ate at her and weakened, and what the weakness of the body and the soul. That's the devil card. That
Yes.
environment, when you're in a toxic workplace,
Mm.
it causes whole systems in your body to shut down.
Oh my gosh, I just got the goosebumps. So just talking with my friend who's struggling in the workforce right now because it's so rampant. We're not promoting vitality, enjoyment, whatever.
We
If you're,
are.
I mean, even, I mean, there are plenty of people that work their whole life at McDonald's and perfectly happy.
Right. And you know
And
what
they
they
didn't make
said?
a ton of money. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was interrupting you, excuse me. But
No,
what I
I
want
want to
to
hear it.
say for you to continue it is because they set their life up and to where that's all they needed. They didn't need $5 billion a year to have the same quality of life. Go ahead.
Quality of life, quality versus quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can have a million friends on Facebook, but if you have no personal connection with them, and I'm not judging that either, please. I'm, just understanding value, quality and value,
Yeah. And
you
and
know.
that's why I go back to the Steve Jobs thing. Like I know it sounds like I'm being like
He's a
devil's
good,
advocate a
I
lot.
brought him up, so he's a
Look,
good example.
look, devil in the details. It may sound like I'm being devil's advocate, but I look at it like this, right?
Good. I like that. I like that.
When you have that, let's say school of conversations from the school of hard knocks blows up and you're like the next Oprah Winfrey, right? Your schedule is going to be from where it is now, you're going to be like super booked, right? Like Steve Jobs became. So what if in Steve Jobs' mind, right, he was like, well, you know what? Our sons and daughters need this. I'm not going to be the best candidate. I'm not the expert at that. I don't really have a lot of time for it. It's going to really reduce the quality they're going to experience of it. So maybe he just paid, $10 million, something stupid, $5,000 to go. And so his sons and daughters could be put in the expert program. And then you got the situation of the reality is the truth is, yeah, he wasn't there, but because he wasn't there, he was able to put them in the expert field of knowledge to absorb from in all these different things of life, so it's always going to be that the devil's in the details. What are we really mining for when we dig into the details that's there?
And the best way, and we'll probably wrap this up in a bit here, the best way to kind of wrap that up in a nutshell is, when you have confusion, all this, look at the details, and then most importantly, what's your objective? What are you really after? I mean, so many people get wrapped up in these conversations, they lose sight in the details as well. So what are we saying here? The details are everything. Pay attention to them, dissect them, break them down. Yeah. And I would really like to do another pod. I know we're going to do one with Opal coming up here soon.
Okay.
The three of us, we're going to get together and we'll talk about perspectives, people from different perspectives on a certain topic. I guess that's the best way I could put it. But anyways, how would you wrap up this conversation in terms of the devil's in the details? What's your closing statement on that? What do you have to say for that?
That's a good question here. I think I would just go back to the devil card itself, and it's a gift and a curse. The details are a gift and a curse.
Yep.
If we allow them, they will be our curse. If we explore them, they will become our gifts.
And like a tool.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a type of a tool. And I would love to talk about that too. There's so many things we could do a million podcasts, which I don't care. No holds bar. I really doesn't matter to me. But I just this has really been coming to me a lot, the detail and the devil, and
Mhm.
the details can get in the way. And especially if we're not clear what they are. And then,
Mhm.
and I think that comes from asking questions,
Yeah.
really, it's so important. Asking
Yeah.
questions and learning it. If something doesn't have clarity, ask the question, and usually that'll lead to an answer, which leads to another question. And you can really get to the root of things. And it's so important. One thing I would love to do is revisit your live show. And I'd love to come on your podcast channel and review that live show that you did last night and what happened with, people saying you started off as a McDonald's employee and all, and I'd love to revisit that because I think that's so important. It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Let's do it. It's and the devil card. People that know tarot, they say, hey, when it's up, it sometimes have positive, and when you think in reverse, it's got like a negative association. But remember that when the devil card is in reverse, it's a sign that it can be a sign that you are gaining control.
Hmm.
So it may not look like it when that person is, but when you dive into the details, either you can gain the control to free yourself from it, or in those same details, you'll gain control to empower yourself to realize really how powerful you are and where you're going.
Hmm.
The beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Definitely. And I don't know, I'm gonna have to still think about this because this the devil's in the details just keeps coming up because I see all
Mhm.
these details and how, yeah, it can confuse things, muddy things, and we need clarity at this point where we are in the world. It's time to
Mhm.
get down to the nitty gritty. What are we really talking about? What is really on the table here? Let's dig in. And that's what I love about us doing this work together, because it's so important to have these
Yeah.
conversations. I know I say that I know I sound like a broken record, but for so many years, and I know you're the same as me, we've just felt this way. Like, no, man, no, that's inaccurate. It's not that. And
Right.
you know what I mean? And people just look at you like you're crazy. But I'm just so excited that we have this opportunity to get some clarity.
Yeah. And you've repeated it a lot. Maybe this is what maybe this is leading us into the next thought process here, because the confusion and the needing of clarity and this side and that side, it really brought us down to when I said the etymology of war is confusion. And when you were talking just there, the phrase, the book title, The Art of War, you know, popped into my mind, because the use of these details is basically could be an attack on against you, or it could be you know, support behind you, right? And it's all a matter, but that's the factor of war, right? Are you? It's a war going on, and no man is safe from.
And more happens when there's confusion and a lack of understanding.
Yeah, yeah, and
Lack
when
of understanding.
for those that aren't clear on what I'm saying, war doesn't necessarily mean that you're dropping bombs or shooting at each other and stuff like that. War could be the fact that they slid that contract out there, knowing you didn't know what it was means, knowing that you weren't gonna read it, you signed it, and now you're like an artist talking about you sold your soul to the devil, because the devil was in the details all along.
I love that. I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Pasha.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. We're definitely going to do this podcast with Opal, but in between there and then I'm sure we're going to do another podcast. I would really like to revisit some of these things we've talked about, because we've covered quite a bit, and dig in and peel the layers of the onion back.
Yeah, absolutely. You know
There's
how we
more
do.
layers to what we talked about today, and I want to dig in. And what exactly that will lead us to, I don't know. I'm going to watch this, and I know you will, and I'm sure between the two of us, we'll come up with our next point.
Mhm.
Um, but thank you so much. I'm so thankful for
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. The feeling's mutual. Keep being great.
Okay. You too. Always a perfect day.
Always a perfect day.
Bye.